Can a gay man and a straight woman have a happy marriage? Correspondent Jordyn Rolling travels to Salt Lake City, Utah to explore how some Mormons with different sexual orientations end up married to each other.
We have a happy, fulfilling sex life, but what motivates that sex life is different.
Is something different.
It's not like I come home and see her and I gotta get on that.
A mixed orientation marriage is one in which two partners have different sexual orientations. These kinds of relationships are commonly found in Mormon communities.
We have given much thought and care to better understanding the experience of same-sex attraction and making sure individuals who feel such attraction and their families feel welcome and part of the great worldwide family that is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
The Mormon doctrine considers those in same-sex marriages apostates, meaning they can no longer be affiliated with the church, yet it hasn't taken a clear stance on mixed orientation marriages.
Basically, the church gives you three choices if you're LGBT Mormon. You can either be celibate for the rest of your life, you could leave the church and get excommunicated, or you can enter into a mixed orientation marriage and marry someone that you're not attracted to.
I'm on my way to meet Blaine and Lindsay Hickman. They are currently in a mixed orientation marriage and they've been married for almost 15 years. Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Jordyn. Blaine. Hi.
Lindsay.
Jordyn, nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you too.
So Blaine, have you ever been with a man? And Lindsay, have you ever been with another man?
No, which is funny, but no.
Yeah.
Blaine and Lindsay met in high school where they became best friends. They bonded over their love for theater and music. After high school, when Blaine returned from teaching English in China, he finally came out to Lindsay. And even though his family would have supported him in a gay relationship, he chose to pursue one with Lindsay.
If I had come out and there wasn't like a specific girl there that I was really wanting things to work out with, and
Probably would have been a lot different.
it would have been a lot different.
Blaine works as a therapist whose focus is to help people who are trying to reconcile their sexual orientation with their religious beliefs. He previously volunteered with North Star International.
Like dealing with stuff about like with men or whatever, Lindsay's really good at like understanding that doesn't have to do with me. That doesn't have anything to do with like me not being cute enough or not being desirable enough. Those are very different things.
Well, and I always like to say, he chose me out of all the boys and the girls, so I feel pretty great.
Right.
Danny Caldwell was married to a woman for 10 years before filing for divorce. As a devoted gay Mormon, he believed a mixed orientation marriage was his only option.
God wants me to marry a woman, and in the LDS temple, for me, that was, what I needed to do to be happy. Because that's what's taught in the church, is that happiness comes from living the gospel. And if you're not living the gospel, you're not going to be happy.
I spoke with John DeLynn, whose research looks specifically at those either currently in or once in a mixed orientation marriage.
Basically, our estimates were about 70% of those who entered into a mixed orientation marriage either got divorced or would be divorced by the time their lives ended. But more stark than the divorce rate was the low quality of life, high levels of sexual identity distress, low levels of self-esteem, and sort of abysmal quality of life ratings that were associated with entering into a mixed orientation marriage.
According to the Center for Disease Control, suicide rates in Utah have increased by almost 50% since 1999. And those who identify as LGBTQ experience higher rates of mental health disorders and suicides than the national population.
We were married for 10 years, and I realized that about every 3 years, I would have these total breakdowns where I would just get super depressed, and I hooked up with a couple guys that I had met online, and it seemed like each time the depression would be worse. And this last time I actually didn't do anything with any guys, but I was so depressed and suicidal. I wasn't fulfilled in the relationship, but I couldn't leave because I would lose everything, was how I saw it. And started to feel like the only way out was suicide. So.
Did you have like a breaking point?
Yeah, I found a therapist that I felt was could help me. So I started working with him on basically writing a letter telling my wife that I can't do it anymore. And at that time I shared the letter with her, and she was very upset, which is understandable, and she left. And that was probably my low. Sorry.
It's okay.
That night I had a gun in my hand. I just thought I'd made such a mess of everything. I'm gonna hurt my kids. I've hurt my wife, who, even though it wasn't working, I still cared about her and I didn't want to hurt her. And I just thought, I could limit the damage if I could just remove myself from the equation. But, I was able to calm myself down. In that process, I realized, it's better for my kids to have a gay dad than a dead dad.
After hearing Danny's experience, I wanted to see what the church had to say about mixed orientation marriages. I've been trying to get a statement about their stance on mixed orientation marriages, and I'm kind of getting the runaround, so I'm just going to show up and see if anyone will talk to me. I've spoken to Carly, but I haven't really gotten any responses back, so I was trying to see if there's any way I could come and anyone would talk to me, or you could call up and ask her, or...
Unless you have an appointment with someone.
Okay, well, since I wasn't able to talk to anyone by just walking in, I'm gonna try to call their media relations senior associate on the phone and see if she'll say anything.
You've reached Carly Brandt-Guyman with LDS Church Public Affairs.
When I finally got a response from the Mormon Church, they didn't address mixed orientation marriages directly, rather stating, "Marriage is defined by God as the union between a man and a woman. We reach out with love to our LGBT brothers and sisters." So it's been kind of challenging to get a direct statement from the church on anything regarding mixed orientation marriage, regarding gay people. Why do you think the church is so tight-lipped?
Probably because everybody looks different. Because there are so many people in the world that have different experiences, and the church really does believe in agency and that people do have a choice.
And truthfully, there are times when I feel like, don't be so tight-lipped, just say something. It's difficult because everybody wants things to be black and white. Just say you support it or say you don't, and then shut up about it. It's just more complicated than that.
Even with a divorce rate at least 20% higher than the national average, some mixed orientation couples are just able to make it work.
If they follow the average, their quality of life is very low. Now, there are always going to be exceptions. Think of a bell curve. There are always going to be people more miserable than you could ever imagine in the bell curve. And there's going to be people who defy all odds and are extremely happy. What the data seem to suggest is that if mixed orientation marriage were a product that you could purchase on the shelf, there should be a big red, huge warning label on the side that says, "Warning, entering into a mixed orientation marriage has a 70% failure rate and is associated with quality of life ratings worse than having lupus." And as long as every gay and lesbian and straight Mormon knows sort of that data before they enter into a mixed orientation marriage, then they're entering into it with full information.
There are some days where they're like, "We hate church." And I was like, "I know, but this is what we believe in, and so when you believe in this, we go to church, the huge reason why our marriage has worked out so well is because we just talk about things.
Right. We have like a fulfilling, like happy sex life too.
Which
But-
a lot of people also assume like, oh, you must just be friends and not do
Right.
any of that.
Or they assume like, oh, you must have to like pretend she's a boy. Which
That would not fly if that was.
no. Like having sex is a choice
weird.
that we make that is like motivated by different
By,
things
like,
besides just like being.
That we love each other and our relationship's important and we, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know that that's a part of a relationship.
Right.
Right.
And it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
What would you tell someone who is considering entering into a mixed orientation marriage, if you could give them a piece of advice?
I would say, just be careful. Like, realize what you're doing. It's not going to go away. If you think that the marriage is going to make the same-sex attraction go away, it's not going to.
Danny is now engaged to his fiancée Ty, and they're planning to get married next year.
And he makes delicious scrambled eggs. So
We'll
what more
see.
could you ask for?
I asked Blaine why he feels his marriage won't end up like Danny's.
I feel really okay to come to her and say like, today was just a really bad gay day. Like I'm just feeling like I just,
And feeling accepted for whatever he says. you
yeah,
know?
and like just like I'm able to communicate like today it's hard and today I wish I had something else and so that we can talk about that and
If the church came out and said mixed orientation marriages are not viable because you have same-sex attraction, we don't support that, would you choose church or would you choose your marriage?
my marriage.
Yeah, marriage.
The church is a tool to help me be connected with God.
But I feel like that's what fuels us, is like having an eternal perspective that we aren't just who we are now.
It's
that
not
we-
just about
that
this.
eternity, that we go on forever. And that's kind of comforting for me to know that life just doesn't end.
So after that piece, I have a lot of questions, and I'm sure you do too. So we have Jordyn Rolling here in the studio with us, who's going to talk to us about her reporting on mixed orientation marriages in Utah. Jordyn, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So this was actually a kind of a personal story for you then.
Yeah, it was very personal for me. I think this has been long overdue for me to be able to explore this topic. You know, my mom grew up in Utah, grew up Mormon, and basically hid a very big part of herself for her entire life. And she was married for 20 years, had 4 kids, and then finally when she, was, I think like 45, came out and decided to change her life and go a different way.
What was your impression of Blaine and Lindsay?
You know, it's funny, I told them when I first met them, I went into the story thinking that they were gonna be kooky, thinking they were gonna be weird. They were honestly the sweetest, most normal people. And they have 3 boys, as you could see. Like, they have 3 boys who are happy and normal, and their kids know what's going on. Blaine and Lindsay speak openly about their situation, their dynamic in front of their kids, and their kids know. And their kids, frankly, are just like, Mom and Dad, like, why do people care? Like, who cares? Like, they're so used to having a gay dad and a straight mom and this dynamic that they're just like, who cares?
That was actually something that I was really curious as I was watching the piece, if they had talked to their children about the fact that he is gay.
Yeah, they know, and in fact, like, I think their kids are very open about it too. I even asked Blaine and Lindsay, like, what would you do if one of your sons came out as gay? And they were just like, we wouldn't care. Like, they would be completely supportive, completely happy for them. If they wanted to pursue a same-sex marriage, they would be completely supportive as well.
And now you also talked to Danny, who left his mixed orientation marriage, and obviously talked to Blaine, who's still in that kind of marriage. How sustainable do you think Blaine and Lindsay's relationship is?
I think we have to remember their relationship is built off of friendship. It's a friendship that
comes with the romantic and sexual aspects of relationships, but it's a friendship first. As Jordyn explained in the piece, there's the bell curve. So some people can make it work, others can't make it work, and then there's people that just kind of float in the middle. Blaine and Lindsay have been making it work for 15 years.
So we've seen in recent years gay marriage has become more broadly accepted nationwide. Is there any kind of movement within the church or in the community to push for acceptance of same-sex marriage?
So you're right, Natasha. Same-sex marriage is legal in all 50 states, right? Actually, in Utah, we're seeing that Mormons aged 18 to 29, there's a 52% support rate for same-sex marriage. So younger Mormons are in fact supporting, progress in the LGBT community, but we're seeing the older Mormons are still not supportive of it. But what's interesting is our couple, Blaine and Lindsay, they're one of those couples that, don't believe the doctrine will change, but it doesn't really support the stats that are showing that, the Mormons are kind of progressing with their thought towards same-sex marriage.
Jordyn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for another episode of Mike Dispatch. Leave us your comments and see you next time.